What is the most inoffensive thing you've seen someone get offended by? My 7-month-old was wearing a shirt that had a rocket ship and the NASA logo, and some middle-aged woman in the shop said, "He shouldn't be wearing that because he's clearly not an astronaut." I was dumbfounded. I still remember in kindergarten when my friend and I were reading all the colors out loud on one of those Crayola super packs. I straight up got yelled at and sent to the principal's office for saying, quote, "orange pizzazz," because the teacher said I called someone a pea-butt, not censored, and would not listen despite having the crayon as evidence. After a 30-minute scolding and waiting for my mom to leave work to pick me up for my suspension, she came in all apologetic. When I explained to her the whole situation, not the school side, Ma went ape. I'd heard her say crap once. That's the only swear I ever heard from her, and we had just been rear-ended in traffic. How about
Yeah!
Can he say
Yeah!
Cause you're all being
Yeah!
right now. This is
Yeah!
ridiculous. And just went off while I'm sitting there all surprised and the principal is just red AF. I got unsuspended on the spot, but she pulled me out of school for the day anyway. We had a lovely day, and she explained very well how I shouldn't swear like that unless absolutely necessary and I've exhausted all civility. Quote, "When being civil simply isn't working, sometimes you might have to call someone a pea-butt." The next day at school, I learned that I now had the stigma of being the kid who got the Crayola super pack taken away. We were choosing a mascot for a summer camp where I worked. It was the first day of camp, and we'd always let the campers vote on a mascot that we'd use for the rest of the summer as a sort of bonding thing. This year, the kids voted for wolves as the mascot. It was almost unanimous. But one kid, probably about 9 or 10, threw a fit because wolves are, quote, bad guys and predators and killers, and he doesn't want to be a wolf, he wants to be a hero. He refused to participate in any team activities because he didn't want to be on a team with the, quote, bad guys. At one point, we brought in a guy in a full mascot wolf costume for some anti-bullying program, and the kid had a massive tantrum. I almost felt like we were going to learn at some point that his brother was killed by wolves or some other tragic origin story. I did feel bad for the boy because I was fairly certain he had some kind of unaddressed emotional difficulties or something, but we weren't going to change the mascot name that almost everyone voted for. The really sad thing is that wolf populations have suffered a lot due to stereotypes that they're bad. Friendly reminder to go watch The Bad Guys, a beautifully animated DreamWorks movie with a bumpin' soundtrack and a cast of characters that are incredibly fun to watch. Using a walking stick. I was in a car accident a few years ago and it screwed my leg up. Since then, I've been using a walking stick. I was walking to shop, pre-pandemic, and an old bloke gave me the dirtiest look I've ever seen. "What do you need a cane for? You're only a kid." He actually got quite mad just seeing me using a stick. Like, my dude, I'm just out trying to buy some milk. I don't need your crap today. I didn't say that out loud, I just said it to myself after I got home. Maybe 22 years ago, I had a phone interview with a baking company. I didn't care to have my peers know what I was up to, so I took the call on my cell phone in my car. The call was crystal clear and no technical issues. At one point, they had mentioned the weather and asked how it was where I was. I told him that I was sitting in my car and I could see that it was actively snowing and whatnot. The interviewer asked me, "Are you taking this call on a cell phone?" I told him I was. Then he asked me if I thought that was appropriate. I asked him what he meant by that. He said he thought it was kind of rude to take a formal call on a cell phone. I told him I would be more than happy to conclude the interview if talking on a cell phone was an issue. If he was interested, I'd be happy to continue it the next day when I'd be at a desk. He again repeated how rude he thought it was that I had called from a cell phone and that there was no need to continue the interview process. I disagreed with the first point, but did agree with the second. To this day, I wonder what the heck he was talking about and where he was coming from. One time, someone got offended when I put on my seatbelt, thought I was commenting on her ability to drive. We used an app on work called Bonfire. One person refused to use it because bonfires are for witchcraft and pagans. I spent 9 hours deep cleaning the house for an inspection. I went above and beyond, clearing my work schedule and going the extra mile, and my roommate, quote, double-checked my work. He had a complete psychotic meltdown because I forgot to sweep underneath the couch. I moved out the next day and never spoke to him again. I was at the vet with my cat and he sneezed. This was apparently very offensive to an elder woman. She was there with a corgi, and she started screaming at me for about 30 minutes about pet hygiene. At school, someone didn't have a calculator and asked if anyone had one they could borrow. Someone offered them a pink calculator and they refused, saying that they were offended they'd try and give them something girly. Fellas, is it gay to do math with a pink calculator? I once listened to my boss try to lecture the fire marshal because he was talking about something being flame retardant. Her reasoning was you should just call it fireproof because retardant was an awful word. It was one of those times where I really should have tried to stop her, but instead, I just stood off to the side, probably making a surprised Pikachu face. I got in trouble in kindergarten for saying the word dead. Apparently it was too violent.
Oh my god, have you not subscribed to Am I the Genius yet? That's literally so offensive. You should do it now and subscribe to Am I the Jerk too. So link in the description or whatever.
I had a coworker who got mad at me because I asked her not to tickle me. A, that's inappropriate at work. B, we're not children, we're not in a relationship, and we're not family. C, I don't like being tickled. She flipped out and said everyone likes being tickled and I was being mean to her. Happily, my boss had my back. Edit, this happened over a decade ago. I don't work with that woman or for that company. In fact, even the company doesn't exist anymore. I am also a woman. The coworker was very young and immature. This was her first job, her first time in a professional environment, and she really had no clue about professional workplace behavior. I wasn't upset because she truly thought she was being friendly. But I still don't like being tickled. When I was a child, my mom paid for something with a check. The cashier remarked that my mom had nice handwriting. My mom flew off the handle, and we had to storm out of the shop in outrage. To this day, I have no idea what happened. I'm a disabled person. My life sucks because of my disability, and no longer being able to do the things I used to love makes me quite depressed sometimes. Some jerkwad tried to lecture me about how I was ableist for wishing there was a cure for my disability. Screw me for not enjoying being in constant pain and possibly ending up in a wheelchair in the future, I guess. I worked at a restaurant, and we put up some Halloween decorations. We had to take them all down when someone found the glittery skull decoration offensive. My mom got mad because, and I quote, she never asks me for money, referring to me. I'm sorry? Would you rather I constantly bug you for cash so I can buy candy and stuff? Back when I was in grade school, a teacher of mine was discussing something. I don't exactly remember the context. And he said God or a God in order to be neutral to those with various religious beliefs, and probably to cover his butt since he was commenting about religion while in school. And the girl in my class got so upset/offended about it, she started bawling about how he is being disrespectful to her beliefs. The Pixar short Lava. He walked out saying it was deeply offensive and didn't explain why. Gets offended, refuses to elaborate, leaves. Profit? Typing in someone's phone number to activate their rewards card. Finished typing it in, found her name, proceeded with the transaction, and said, "You're good to go." The woman replied with,
What is that supposed to mean?
And she gave me a fiery glare as if I just kicked her toddler across the store. It means, I found your information. You'll get your points. Oh, okay then. I still can't figure out why she flipped out like that. It was a rewards card. She got her points and she got her discount. What? The only possible way I can imagine getting offended by this is from never having heard that phrase before and assuming it meant I would like you to leave. But even then, that is quite an assumption. Race tangent. I called someone fam and she blew up at me saying that I clearly meant the N-word. Had someone get offended by me calling my brother bro. They insisted that I was racist and that white people can't be related to Mexicans. Like, seriously, lady, that's not how genetics work. We are 100% related and are a mix of white and Native American. It's not that unheard of for one biological sibling to come out lighter or darker than the other. And even if we weren't related, seriously? I'm racist for calling someone close to me my bro despite being different skin tones? Seriously. Thank you for coming to my rant session. Have a good day. Someone once got offended because I used the word black in conversation. I was talking about an article of clothing / the color black. They tried to make it into something about race and that I shouldn't use the term black anymore and should say African American. I said that makes no sense. I'm literally talking about the color black. Am I supposed to say I'm wearing an African American colored shirt? Maybe I'm crazy, but I think that's actually offensive. This has been a race tangent. The Canadian flag told me that if they put up a Canadian flag in Pennsylvania, the neighbors would come and shoot everybody. Not quite sure about the logic on that one. This guy at a Halloween party I was at was dressed in a giant bacon costume. Some girl was yelling at him for being so offensive towards Jews and Muslims. She was neither Jewish nor Muslim. One of the Muslim guys at the party asked her what the heck she was talking about, but she didn't back down. I have no idea why people feel they need to go out of their way to be inaccurately offended on behalf of other people's cultures / religions. A picture of an eye. We have an organization-wide theme every year, and all the PCs on our network have the same background and theme, which can't be changed. So, this year's theme is Vision is 2020, and the background was a zoomed-in picture of an eye in really awesome colors. 2 women on staff wrote letters to complain that the picture was, quote, heathen, as it drew from, quote, Illuminati imagery and paid tribute to the, quote, all-seeing eye of Egyptian deities. They whined and complained to such an extent that the picture was eventually changed to shut them up and let the normal folks get back to our actual work. This. An article from BBC states, Professor Greg Patton at the University of Southern California, USC, was telling students in a communications lecture last month about filler or pause words such as or you know in Chinese. Footage of his lecture, which has now gone viral, shows Professor Patton saying, in China, the most common pause word is that. So in China, it might be ni, ge, ni, ge, ni, ge. Enunciated, ni, ge, sounds like the N-word, which led several of the professor's students to complain to the university. Responding to the complaint, the dean of the university, Jeffrey Garrett, told students that Professor Patton would no longer be teaching the course. Quote, it is simply unacceptable for the faculty to use words in class that can marginalize, hurt, and harm the psychological safety of our students, he said. The university says that Professor Patton, quote, volunteered to step away from his role amid the investigation into complaints made against him. This is the stupidest thing to get offended over that I've seen in quite a while, and damaging to actual cases of racist terminology being used inappropriately. This reminds me of the discussions people have had in class about books like Huckleberry Finn or To Kill a Mockingbird, where uses of the N-word have historical context. Nobody asked for my opinion, but here's what I think. Preserving history is instrumental in teaching ways to prevent it from happening again. We need to know what bad examples look like so we can set better ones. If we completely sanitize history and skip over it, it defeats the purpose of learning it. I told my sister in a private message that it's, quote, first, spelled 1ST, not first, 1RST, after she posted something on Facebook with the spelling error. She flipped out, saying how I'm a, quote, bully, and I need to, quote, appreciate that her spelling is more unique. Edit, she's 27. I sang the song Hit the Road Jack to a kid I just beat in a game while in the 3rd grade mockingly. He took that as me calling him a jackbutt. He told the recess monitor this. I was told to stand against a wall away from the rest of the kids with the recess monitor. I am now 27, married with 2 kids, but I will never forget this. If you ever see this, I didn't call you a jackbutt, Jared, but now, screw you forever! got chewed out once for saying, "Yes, ma'am," to a lady. I'm in the South. That's what we do. Southerner here, I can explain this one. So when you refer to someone as ma'am, usually what that means is that they're either older than you or it's used as a term of respect. So if you're addressing one of your superiors, you'll usually say, "Yes, ma'am." As for the age of someone you're talking to, if they're only a few years older than you, they might take that as you thinking they're old. Which, I know, that sounds kind of stupid, but some people are really sensitive about their age. So tread with caution. A sandwich. I kid you not. My ex-husband was given a sandwich by our then 13-year-old daughter, and because she cut the sandwich, he went off on a massive strop about how his sandwiches should never be cut. The poor kid's face, she was crushed. It still winds me up to no end every time I think about it. I managed a small, new team that had no procedures or policies, so I set about instituting some. Quote, you never know. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and then no one would know how to process these requests, I told them, when asking for their feedback and for them to write up how they did their tasks. Then, we would come back together and decide best practices in a meeting. Little man filed a complaint to the manager for my use of, quote, violent imagery and said that he felt threatened. It was a whole thing. Ultimately, he got fired. Screw him, bye! Edit, well, this blew up. For clarity, he didn't get fired for this one incident. He was a horrible employee with real issues having a woman in charge. In French, we have a way to address for a man, monsieur, a married woman, madame, an unmarried woman, mademoiselle, and we used to have one for an unmarried man, mademoiselle, which disappeared from official paperwork since I don't even know when. In the name of gender equality, mademoiselle was also removed a few years ago from official paperwork. Also, in the name of gender equality, some employees were told not to call young women mademoiselle anymore and to go with madame. So the trick is, some women will get offended when called madame because it makes them feel old, and some women will get offended when called mademoiselle because it's sexist. Clerks are doomed. I'm a white South African. Born here, my nationality is South African. Some American girl got offended that I called myself South, quote, African as a white dude and said that only people of color can call themselves that. Brah, it's a nationality. The kid that got the cops called on him and suspended from school for having a Nerf gun in his room during a Zoom class. At my wedding, we marked the vegetarian items as vegetarian. This made the one vegetarian at my wedding, sister-in-law who hates me, fly into a catatonic rage because we are singling out the vegetarian food as vegetarian and not treating it as normal food. Then how the heck are they supposed to know it's vegetarian? I had a pastor that insisted we call candy canes, quote, Jesus sticks, because Christmas is all about Jesus, y'all. Ain't no fun to be had otherwise. Well, I was 7 and accidentally referred to the Holy Jesus stick as a candy cane in his presence. And I crap you not, he speed walked over to my dad to tell on me and carry on about how offensive it is to see all the world trying to remove Christ from Christmas. It starts in the home, den of sin without Jesus, something, dark side. My dad asked him if he was serious. Spoiler, he was very, very serious. And then told him to grow up. And that's how my dad dressed up as Santa a couple weeks later and came into the church yelling, "Ho, ho, ho, candy canes!" while passing said satanic candy canes to all the little children during the children's church portion of service. The pettiness runs deep, and it was delicious. When my ex and I were looking at houses, we brought his dad, let's call him Dave, to see houses we already liked. The real estate agent didn't spend enough time on telling Dave he was right that the bottom step was too tall. So later that night, I got to hear an hour-long lecture from Dave about how the agent was a piece of crap that was trying to take advantage of us. A large reason I'm single now is because my mental issues are too much to deal with, but Dave here is definitely a contributing factor as well. An AIDS walk happening in front of our restaurant. My boss said, well, they better not come in here spreading their disease. I was like, dude, that's really not how AIDS or their walks work. One Easter Sunday, a lady in church was wearing a hat that had the Easter bunny, chicks, and colored eggs as part of its design. The woman in the pew behind her took umbrage, telling the lady that Easter was about the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, not about, quote, silly rabbits, chicks, and eggs. This happened just last week. I work at a bank in an affluent part of Atlanta. Read old white money. And a woman called in to let us know she was offended by the security questions for her online banking. The security questions she herself set up. What was your mother's maiden name?
That's none of your business!
My dad loves to tell the story of how, shortly after they were married, he and mom went to get some fast food. As they pulled up to the drive-thru window, my very conservative mom saw a sign that said, condiments available upon request, and said, oh my god, that's disgusting. Why would a restaurant feel the need to give those out? She had misread it and thought they were giving out condoms upon request. One of my coworkers was surprised and said, oh my god. A religious coworker overheard her using God's name in vain and reported it to HR. They had to have meetings with HR and the managers about respecting people's religion. The lady said, oh my god, she didn't wish for the death of Christianity. It was ridiculous. Yeah, fun fact about that oh my god thing people love to get their panties in a twist about. The whole reason you shouldn't use the Lord's name in vain is so you can't murder people and say that God told you to do it. Abraham and Isaac is the prime example of this. God literally had to intervene and be like, hey yo, Abraham, chill out, I didn't say you could do that. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. The only possible way I can imagine getting offended by this is from Never Herving Had? Never Herving Had.